Classroom, community, and learning environment. Um, this was by far my strongest area over the last couple of years. Um, some of it is much like the last domain, I think just due to gifts and talents that are not necessarily my doing, right? Um, Ways that I act, ways that I am in the room, and feelings that I have towards children um, are those God-given gifts and talents that I didn't necessarily need to develop in order to help in this. Um, but this is also a good example of transitioning from talent to developed skill. I think over the last couple of years, this is the area that I have worked the least amount on. Um, but it's also the area that I've thought about the most, frankly. More than planning, more than assessment, more than instructional delivery. It's been this. And that's because I do have a dream, a very deep dream about how I want the classroom to look and to act, right? Last domain I mentioned jazz tones, just the way that the classroom acts and interacts with one another and with the school, and the kind of community that I want to see built in my classroom. One where children feel ownership of the space, while at the same time I am balancing that with the fact that I'm training children, right? And sometimes training can be something that is uncomfortable and a little bit oppressive, for lack of a better word. Just meaning that there are times when I have to give directives and they must follow. It's not really one of those issues where they have a choice sometimes. Later I'll talk about just ways I've been thinking about how that will impact my first year at Dodge for third grade. Um, it's interesting though, I mean, even though it's getting, well, actually it's not interesting, but it's ironic. I mean, although it's the area that I've given the least amount of attention to, is the area that I would like to grow in the most. I do feel like these are my strengths, right? Domain 2 and Domain 3. Um, I do believe that over time, these two domains are going to be the ones that are going to carry my practice. These are going to be the ones that I will do professional development on. These are the ones that I'm going to be known for and remembered for. Don't necessarily think I will be remembered for planning, preparation, and assessment, or my professional responsibilities. Not that I don't want to be excellent in those areas. I think I just understand that domains 2 and 3 is where my strengths lie, and frankly, where my highest amount of interest lie. Um, Over the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing books that I definitely want to get into. Disciplining with Dignity, Teaching Children How to Care, all of the responsive classroom books. I mean, these are the things that get me hyped about teaching. It's not teaching math, although I got kind of excited about it for a minute. It's not teaching IDUs. It's really the social emotional learning. It's really about helping them to develop into uh, adults of character, adults that are responsive and reflective, adults that are critical thinkers. That's a big thing, and it makes me want to think. It makes me think about just my own desires about counseling, but that's a later date. That isn't the purpose of this. Um, So I think about ways that that has changed over the last couple of years. Definitely age appropriateness is something that I've also been wrestling with. A good example would be the use of inappropriate language. There is certain language that I allow high school students to use, or I don't get too bent out of shape when they use it. But with first, second, third, or fourth graders, yeah, no. It's definitely a different thing. It's definitely a very hard line um, that I draw around the use of certain kinds of language in the classroom. Of course, I'm talking here about cursing, about sexual language, or any other kind of adult topics that shouldn't be talked about by 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, frankly. And I think that's a really interesting place where I draw the line, where not everybody agrees, but most do. Um, so I definitely look for that. When I think about this upcoming year, I am looking to take valuable instructional time and use some of that time to do social emotional learning. I wasn't really sure of that until the interview with Tanya Burton, for the coaching position, and just listening to her spend 15 minutes every single morning attending to their social emotional needs, using breakfast time, as some of the time that is done. I'm sure morning meeting, some of that time is used for that as well. And then knowing that she's doing this within um, a regular school day, but even a more protracted school day, because their school day ends at 2:15 technically, because 2:15, 2:45 they do something else. And so seeing that it can be done between 8:51 and 2:15 helps me to understand that it can be done um, with my 8:45 to 8:51 to 2:45 school day. Now, I'm not exactly sure what any of that's going to look like next year, but that's something to be thinking about. Um, this summer, I don't want to go too hard on it, but I definitely want to get the responsive classroom books, at least the morning meeting and the first 6 weeks. And I really want to concentrate on those first few weeks, really building up routines and procedures that teach children how to respect one another and how to respect me. And also teach me how to respect them. We're all learning here. Um, and I think that that's probably the greatest way that I have grown, is that love for planning that kind of spilled into domain 1 is now spilling into domain 3 here. Whereas before, I walked in and I just knew that kids would for the most part get in line and there wouldn't be any big issues. I mean, that's been my experience over the last 6 years as a teacher. Now I want to plan for the success as opposed to assuming that it will come because of history. And so that may also be a little growth in domain 1 as well. So the hope is that the development of social emotional awareness, the development of their consciousness, the development of respectful language will only grow in a much more pronounced way and a much quicker way. This is not assuming that we will not have battles as we battle out how the class is going to be run and how I have to stand firm and relent in some areas. But what I am saying is that I know that there are ways that we can build communities that are respectful, and even in schools where adults aren't that respectful. I've seen it done, and people are writing books about it, so obviously it's being done somewhere. It's just a matter of doing it here. I do understand that my gender plays a role in this. As one mother told me, sometimes when you put a little bass in your voice, they respond differently, which is true. I do understand that my gender plays a huge role, probably in my instructional delivery as well. When I put on that teacher stance, if you will, it communicates something that is, I think, a bit more forceful than if a woman does it. And I'm not going to get into the reasons why at this point, but I know that that is something that I'm going to use to my advantage. That, as a man, there's a certain way that most kids will see me, and for the most part, I can use that to my advantage to build a respect for community. At times, I will have to break through their own apprehensions about males because of their own experiences and their own history that they're bringing into the classroom. But I'm okay with that as well. But I think that, so I mean, if I just repeat, just where I think it's come and where I think it's going, it's come from a place where I just relied on my gifts and my talents and the ways that I knew how to talk to children and love children. Um, God has given me a disposition that helps people to feel loved. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't turn a cold shoulder sometimes and they feel hated. So I definitely need to work on my consistency as well. Um, but, it's moving towards one who plans to love people, plans to take care of people, which is a completely different stance. At least I believe it is. Also, something I experimented with at Barton was that teacher compass. Just thinking about having a space in the room that speaks to the teacher, and not just everything that speaks to the student. And I think I want to continue. I don't think, I know I want to continue that in my first year of teaching. Just having something that speaks to me, something that helps me to understand what the expectations for me, what they are, and them not just being professional and academic, but ones that are also social emotional, to help me deal with my own needs and my own issues. I think it would only help me to be more empathetic to students, as I remember that I am not perfected in my social emotional growth. I am still growing. I'm still learning how to be a man. I'm still learning how to be responsive and respectful. And I think as they see me working towards perfection, understanding that perfection will never be gained, not on this side of glory, that they will also be more patient with themselves and hopefully with other people as they also learn how to perfect their social emotional skills and interactions with other people.